than white folks. They get into better colleges on average than white folks. And that makes sense, because after all, the system was rigged for the benefit of Asian people. Right? Well, this is why the Asian founders created an Asian constitution on behalf of Asian people, which is why the Constitution is written in Korean. White privilege is just a way to tell you to shut up. It's a way to say that your perspective doesn't matter because of the color of your skin. It is baseline racism. It is baseline racism. Okay, so the left can't actually make the argument that the system is responsible for all of the inequality in society. So next, they come up with a different argument. And that argument is that we all have to be equal in terms of feelings. All of our feelings have to be equal. And the way to do that is to have safe spaces. Do you all feel equal? Do you feel equal now that you've all been booted from that hall because you don't have a perspective that matches that of the administrators and the idiot protesters who think it's okay to post Black Lives Matter sign, that it's evil and terrible to post Unborn Lives Matter sign? Do you feel equal? Do you feel better? No, I didn't think so. But see, it only applies to one side. Everybody has to feel equal, and the left gets to decide whose feelings actually matter. And so they have trigger warnings, right? We have to have trigger warnings to ensure that everybody is able to survive the catastrophic horror of hearing Christina Hoff Sommers talk. Right? Their life might be over. They might be shaking for days. It's just like Nam. We have to warn people about microaggressions. Everybody has to be very careful of microaggressions because you wouldn't want to be microaggressed. And it's not even that I intend to offend you, it's that if you are offended subjectively, then I have microaggressed you. And that, by the way, allows you to do things like call out the cops. Right? If I microaggress you, then you are allowed to do violent things in response. The very language of microaggressions suggests that I have done something aggressive to you, and now you can do something aggressive to me. Right? You can threaten to arrest me if I set foot on your campus. And my favorite story about this, and I'll tell it quickly for purposes of time, but this has bled up all the way into the upper echelons of the left. One example, how many of you ever watched a CNN headline news? Show of hands. Okay, that is the entire viewership of CNN headline news. No one has ever seen CNN headline news. So, right about the time that Caitlyn Jenner was becoming, of course, our great national saint, ESPN decided that it was important to honor Caitlyn Jenner with the Hero of the Year award. And so CNN Headline News decided, okay, we want to have somebody on to discuss this who's from the right. So they actually looked up conservative in the white pages. I'm the only one in a 30-mile radius of CNN studios in LA, and so they called me. And my perspective on transgenderism, by the way, is that transgenderism is a tragic and horrible mental disorder, and that treating it as anything less than that, treating it as though men can magically become women and women can magically become men, that's mythical crap that is designed to make a small segment of people feel better, but doesn't actually help the people who are suffering, and certainly does nothing for the sanity of the society at large that's being told to change their definitions of basic biology based on subjective feeling. Right? That's my perspective on transgenderism. Anyway, they called me in to discuss this. And I get in there, and the producer walks up to me, and he says, you know, Mr. Shapiro, we don't have any ratings on this network. And I said, yes, I'm well aware. And he said, well, you know, tonight we want to do something a little bit different, and by the way, I was a producer with Jerry Springer. And at that point, I should have said, okay, I need to leave, but being the intrepid sort, I said, no, we'll go ahead anyway. They put me on the stage, and on the stage, it's me and 1, 2, 3 other people next to me, and then I think it was 3 other people on the stage, including Dr. Drew. All of them are the left. So it was me against 6 leftists, which made it almost fair for them. So we start the debate on Caitlyn Jenner. And the only debate that's happening is Caitlyn Jenner a hero or the greatest hero? Should Caitlyn Jenner be given a spot in Arlington National Cemetery or actually canonized? Should Caitlyn Jenner be granted the papal supremacy, or should Caitlyn Jenner actually be given a chariot of fire to ascend to heaven? Right? These were the only questions that were being. So finally they come to me, and they say, what do you think? And I express to you what I think. I said, I don't see what's heroic about this. This is tragic to me. It's somebody expressing his mental illness on a public stage, and the entire country acting as though this is something wonderful, and it isn't. And I neglected to mention, the person sitting next to me is a transgender person, and his name was Zoe Turr. So this is formerly Bob Turr. And Zoe turns to me, and Zoe says, you don't know anything about biology, little boy, in a voice at least an octave lower than mine. And I said, well, I know enough about Caitlyn Jenner's biology to know that every single cell of Caitlyn Jenner's body has a Y chromosome in it, except, ironically, for the exception of some of his sperm cells. And again, Zoe keeps pushing. No, you don't know anything about biology. You don't know anything about genetics, little boy. You don't know anything about genetics. And finally, after a minute and a half of this, I turn and I say, well, what are your genetics, sir? And it was the sir that set him off. On national TV, he reaches over and grabs me by the back of the neck. Really, it's on national TV, live. He grabs him by the back of the neck and he says, if you don't cut that out, I'll send you home in an ambulance. And honest to God, the first thought that went through my mind was, you don't even go home in an ambulance. But what I actually said was, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political conversation. But everybody else on the panel, and this is the part that matters, everybody else on the panel didn't turn on Zoe for grabbing me by the back of the neck and threatening me on national TV, which is battery and assault, actually, by the technical legal definition. That is, instead, they said, how dare you say anything offensive? How could you have offended Zoe that way? That is just terrible. That is just terrible. And that's the mentality of the left. When they say they want equality of feelings can only be enforced at the point of gun or through the use of force. And by the way, the threats of force didn't stop there. As Zoe was hulking off the set, Zoe turns to me and says, I'll see you in the parking lot. It's more like, I'll see you in the parking lot. And I said, no you won't. And security actually ushered me out. I had a lot of experience with security in the last couple of years. And then later, the next day, Zoe threatened me on Twitter to curb stomp me on Twitter. All of which, personally, I thought was deeply unladylike behavior. So, once you've gotten rid of the trigger warnings and microaggressions, then finally you have your pathetic safe spaces for all of these snowflakes who can't deal with the real world and are convinced that the real world is going to conform to your standards of what it ought to be, that the real world is constructed just for you. Let me tell you a secret. In the real world, no one pays you to believe in the power of your dreams. In the real world, nobody cares about your internal feelings. In the real world, all people care about is whether you do good things or bad things. But the safe spaces you construct suggest that you are allowed to ban people who think differently than you in order to achieve a better outcome for yourself. It is the essence of fascism. And all this, of course, makes kids nuts. It makes kids nuts. It makes administrators nuts, clearly. Right? You're being made insane. If you're taught that you're a victim, that you're always a victim, or alternatively, that you're a victimizer, if you're taught that over and over and over again until it never stops, eventually you're going to go out and realize that you get benefit for being a victim. The more you claim victimhood, the better off you are. And this is what the left has done. They've created an entire society of the victim mentality where they say your own work, your own labor, the things you do, they make no difference in life. All that matters is you claim you're a victim, and we give you extra credit. You get special points in heaven and on earth for being a victim. And if you act aggressively because you're a victim, we'll excuse that too. This is pretty dangerous stuff. There's a reason that a Pew poll in 2015 found that 40% of millennials, or people our age, and still part of your generation, believe the government should be able to prevent people from making statements that are offensive to minority groups. That's the repeal of the First Amendment. And we're watching it happen in real time. So here's the bottom line. Social justice, white privilege, safe spaces. These concepts are designed to destroy American ideology. They're designed to destroy American philosophy. America is based on the foundational principle that you and you alone are responsible for your actions, and that you get to say whatever you want so long as you are not physically harming anyone else. That is what America is based on, and the left is ripping away at those foundational principles. The left is saying, you're not responsible for your actions, everybody else is. And they're saying, you don't get to say what you want if it offends somebody else of the left. This is how a democracy, this is how a republic slides slowly into fascism with a smiley face. Right? It doesn't come with the jackboots. It comes first with the flowers and the smiley face and the safety pins. Right? That's where they come from. And people marching in the streets about the results of a just-decided election. How about this? How about go out and vote? That might have helped. If you didn't like the outcome, you could have gone out and voted. There's just a story that these riots that are happening in Portland, literally half of the people rioting did not vote in this election. And these are people who are not interested in upholding the American system. They're not interested in the Constitution. They're not interested in the Declaration. They're not interested in what America is and historically has been. But you are. All of you are. Yeah. Whether you're left or right in this room, you are. Because you actually want to hear different ideas. You actually care about hearing different ideas. You actually care about a free country where people can disagree with you without being threatened with arrest, where people can actually say things that you don't like without them being threatened with physical harm. We all have to stand together now, because that group is getting smaller and smaller. If we stand together, we cannot be defeated, because in the end, freedom will triumph over tyranny. But we have to understand the threat that is, and the threat is tyranny. And if that threat didn't materialize right before your eyes tonight, I don't know what would. We have to fight it every step of the way. We have to fight against the politically correct tyrants who would destroy the foundations of the republic. And I think all of us are part of a battle now. All of us are part of that army. All of us are part of that group. You've been deputized. You're all part of it. You all have cell phones. You're all capable of this. Be part of the fight. Be part of the army. Thanks so much for coming, guys. I
I want to go just a little quicker, and I actually am a person who's very fast. I was speaking rather slowly in the hall because I was waiting for the phone call. And I kept seeing these phone calls. This theory, intersectionality, I'm sorry if you're unfamiliar with it. I'm sorry to familiarize you with it because it's so full of fallacies and conceptual confusion, but it originated in the 1970s and the 1980s, and as I was saying before I was interrupted by the phone call, pathologies like racism, sexism, classism, ageism, ableism, these are not separate systems, they connect, they overlap, they create complex arrangements of advantages and burdens. So a white woman is penalized for her gender, privileged by her race. A black man would suffer from his race, but he garnered advantage from his gender. A black woman would be double jeopardy and suffer a disadvantage from both race and gender. Now, so far, so good. This theory has a surface plausibility. And if you were simply a social worker or even an activist, you were trying to decide a course of action, it's quite reasonable to consider people's complex identities and to be attentive to those who might be forgotten. This theory, as it is practiced on the campus, is something quite different. Intersectional theory has a view of the West, particularly in the United States, that it is, in the words of Patricia Collins, one of the architects of the theory, she was the former president of the American Sociological Association. She has a major textbook on intersectional theory, and she refers to the United States as a matrix of oppression. And in this textbook, students learn that beneath a veneer of freedom and opportunity, there lies a rigid, unforgiving, relentless system of a privilege and burden. Some getting the privilege, others getting the burden. And this system works tirelessly to preserve itself. And as one popular college textbook on intersectionality explains, quote, dominant forms of knowledge have been largely constructed from the experiences of the most powerful. So this text, along with thousands of other texts and articles just like it, seek to alert students to the true nature of the society they're living in. And it promises to put students in touch with deeper, subordinated truths. A phrase from Michel Foucault. By avoiding Western and masculine ways of knowing. Now listen very closely to what I'm about to tell you because I actually think it's the key to the new intolerance on campus. So you know about these interlecting and intersecting axes of oppression. According to this theory, subjugated groups, members of subjugated groups, women and people of color, Muslims, LGBTQ people, they have access to deeper and better ways of thinking than do their oppressors. They have access to more authentic and liberating knowledge about human reality. But they can't get to that knowledge. They can't discover it unless they are speaking among themselves, sharing their lived experience in a safe space. Patricia Collins uses that term. You have to provide safety to members of these groups because members of the privileged groups, especially white, able-bodied, cisgendered males, we just saw what Ben did, and one reason that they would not welcome him on campus, because he's just, coming to campus and attempting to undo efforts of intersectional professors to show you this deeper truth about your society. And if one of these privileged, able-bodied, cisgender males tries to apply reason and logic to those who are marginalized and oppressed, they will be told, that person will be told to stop mansplaining, to check their privilege, and to shut the F up. Members of marginalized groups. And here's another problem with this theory. Like, how do you decide? Not everybody in a marginalized group agrees. So, for example, in some of the things Ben was saying, I urge you to listen to podcasts by Professor Glenn Lowry and John McWhorter, Blogging Heads. And they are two African-American scholars. But they do not agree with the basic premises of intersectionality. So, but then are they credited with having this hidden knowledge, these subordinated truths, these insights into a deeper reality? That's never explained. The ins and the people who are in and the, or me, as I said, an age-empowered, age-enhanced woman, I should also have access to these deeper truths, but I don't count, because according to this theory, if you don't agree with the theory, that proves that you're part of the problem it's trying to solve. This happens to be a feature of a conspiracy theory. It can be falsified, but moving on. So this matrix of oppression is so pernicious and omnipresent, according to this theory, that it's furtively manifest in everything. And that is why its reign requires punishing every little microaggression. So in this light, if you take someone like Dean I told you about, Dean Mary Spellman, she awkwardly worded her email, but it takes on new meaning because they would think this wasn't just an accident. This is a privileged dean, and in fact she was called out. If you watch her ritual shaming, one student said, "You're further perpetrating our otherness." So that's the language that's of intersectionality. Now, unlike classical liberalism, which I believe in, intersectional theory did not develop out of the European Enlightenment. It is not giving expression to the ideals of the U.S. Constitution, heaven forbid. It grew out of the radical politics of the 1960s. Philosophy, basically the philosophy of Karl Marx and his modern-day heirs, Paulo Freire, Franz Fanon, Michel Foucault. Now, this tradition views American ideals like free expression, due process, the right to pursue happiness, many of the things that Ben was talking about, the responsibility, making good choices. They view this as ploys used by the privileged classes to maintain the oppression matrix. And let me give you an example of how this works. As an equity feminist, I believe in, as I said, the values of the Enlightenment and our constitutional freedoms. And I have to say that when I look at something like Sandra Day O'Connor becoming appointed to the United States Supreme Court, that seems to be a real step forward. But Bell Hooks, who is one of the best-known influential intersectional theorists, she strongly disagrees. She has written, "Women like O'Connor," she says, "exercise power alongside men as they continue to support white supremacy, capitalism, and patriarchy." So according to Hooks, quote, "As long as the United States is imperialist, capitalist, patriarchal, no large female majority can ever enter the existing ranks of the powerful." It is impossible to overstate the influence of this theory on the campus today. Gender studies, ethnic studies, whole areas of anthropology, education, sociology, they have adopted it as their guiding doctrine. I went to the DePaul Gender Studies website, and one of the things I found is in all aspects of the programs, there's an emphasis on action-based scholarship that explores interlocking systems of oppression and privilege, gender, race, sexuality, class, nation. This is what they need. This is what they're going to interrogate. But I want to interrogate them for just one moment. By training, I am a philosopher. I taught philosophy for many years. And that means that I am a stickler for things like reason, logic, and dispassionate evaluation of evidence. Now, I am troubled by this theory. I am persuaded that if classically liberal scholars, if scholars who believe in our traditions of freedom, if they don't come forward and confront it, then the fanaticism we're seeing on campus is going to intensify. The tribalism, the anger. This is a theory for the pursuit of unhappiness. And it is flourishing on the campus, and scholars are going to have to come forward. When I was looking at this theory, I tried to find critics. I thought, this can't be me. There have to be other people that see that this is a crackpot theory. I could only find Marxists. They were very good critics. They just didn't want to share class with all the other axes of oppression. They wanted to share class, and they did very good analysis. But there is so much wrong with it, it is hard to know where to begin. begin, but let's start with bell hooks disparaging the United States as imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. Let's unpack that a bit and check the facts. Imperialist. Now, the hallmark of all empires, from Persia to Rome to France under Napoleon, has been invasion, conquest, and plunder. Now, the U.S. is more powerful than all of them put together. We have the ability to invade and conquer and plunder much of the world if we wanted to, but we don't. Japan and Germany, they went to war against us in the 1940s. They killed vast numbers of our soldiers. We did occupy them after the war, but instead of plundering, we turned them into prosperous, independent democracies. Now, our record is hardly spotless, but to describe the United States as a menacing imperialist power, we're just not. Long and honorable history of fighting it and trying to overcome it. And a recent study of racial intolerance by 2 Swedish economists found that the United States was among the world's most tolerant societies. India and Jordan were the least tolerant, so be aware of that. Intersection, and I know intersectionals, some of them are my friends and colleagues, and they will reply that even if American attitudes are better, more tolerant, the dominant white population still maintains supremacy through a rigid set of political, economic, and cultural structures. Now, if that is true, then it doesn't seem that we're doing a very good job maintaining these structures because, for example, in recent years, the likelihood of a Latino girl is more likely to go to college than a white boy. And African American girls are about the same as white boys. Asian girls are ahead of everyone. We also, in terms of income, the wage gap, we constantly hear about men, white men, but white men are out-earned by Asian men. And the gap between the earnings of white men and Asian men is bigger than the gap between all men and all women. But somehow we don't talk about that on Pay Equity Day. And I'm not... Look at the fact that so many African Americans are the most admired cultural icons. Racism is a problem in this society, of course it is. But to call us a white supremacist society, that's not grounded in fact. It's grounded in dogma. What about capitalism? Okay, capitalism. That is accurate. Yes, we are a capitalist society. Now, that term, capitalism, is favored by Karl Marx. A less pejorative word would be free market, free enterprise, economic liberty. Yes, in the United States we have economic liberty, and thank goodness for that. So, if they're going to invade against capitalism, they are invading against a system that is responsible for taking vast populations across the world out of poverty. The free market just refers to the free exchange of goods and services. Without that, freedom societies tend to be poor, oppressive, and miserable. Anyway, finally, patriarchy, and then I will conclude. Patriarchy is a system where men hold all the power, and women do not. I'm sorry, but women do hold power in the United States. Many of them lead our great universities, high positions in our giant corporations. A woman almost won the presidency of the United States. She got more votes. American women, especially college women, are among the freest and most self-determining women in the history of the world. Women are better educated, they live longer, and men still do all the gritty, dangerous jobs. Now, again, are things perfect for women? No, they are not. But to refer to the United States as a patriarchy is absurd. It's 2016, not 1950. The U.S. is deeply flawed. You will dispute that. But it's also one of the most successful and diverse democracies in human history. It is not a matrix of oppression. It is a matrix of freedom, opportunity, and happiness. Now, I can already imagine the objections, but I am going to just conclude by saying that this theory is causing divisions, it's causing unhappiness, it has unleashed a lot of anger in people who now feel free to do to others other people. We can do better. Scholars who value our traditions of freedom and who value rational scholarship, they're going to have to come out of hiding. And my advice to college students, my advice to all of you, fight for what is rightfully yours. The freedom to speak, to think, to grow. Just the freedom to express yourself. And I just don't think you want the years of 2000, 2007, 2016, 2017, the years where freedom died. Don't let that happen. American campuses have become islands of repression in a sea of freedom. Well, I think it's time to liberate the